Shalom Aleichem, everyone. I speak to you today from the center of the universe, Yerushalayim Kodesh, the center of Yerushalayim, Yeshiva Sar Sameach. Halavai, you could all come and learn here for your vacation time. Let me begin with an idea that has to do with the beginning of the parasha. In the beginning of the parasha, we have the idea of hafalas nedarim, that a father or a husband, under given circumstances, has the right to nullify the vow, the neder that was made by a daughter or a wife. In halacha, we find that a husband is meifir a neder mikanu lahaba, which means to say, if a woman made a neder on Sunday, the husband found out about it on Wednesday, and was meifir neder, he declared the neder invalid, that invalidation only applies from Wednesday and on. On Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, the neder was intact. That's what the Gemara says in Nazir Daf Chav Beis. On the other hand, a chacham or a bezdin that's matir neder is eiger l'mafreya, which means to say there are two ways a neder could be undone. Either through a husband or father, in the case of the woman in the beginning of the parasha, or in the case of a bezdin or a chacham who is what we call matir neder. When a chacham is matir neder, it's retroactive. It dissolves the neder retroactively. So it's interesting that the Torah makes a distinction between two similar ideas. The husband and father are only megas gayas. They only cut the neder from that point and on. And the chacham is eiger l'mafreya, rips it out retroactively. Hutner, the pachad yitzock on Yom Kippurim, Ma'amer Gimel Oyz Gimel, gives a beautiful, deep exploration for the concept of eiger l'mafreya, of dissolving things retroactively. I'll try to explain it in my own words as best as I can. The concept of retroactive change, of limafreya, is something we're familiar with in Shas. There are a number of sugyas that talk about it, the concept of yesh bereira, which we have in the Gemara many times. But that concept of retroactive change is not true in the physical world. In the physical world, it's not possible to change things retroactively. If a table broke on Sunday and you didn't get around to fixing it until Tuesday, there's no way to make it fixed as of Monday. You can only fix things from that moment and on. If you forgot to water a plant and the plant died, there's no way to retroactively water it from yesterday so that it should not have died. No such thing. In the physical world, everything is within the limitations of time, which doesn't allow things to happen limafreya, to happen retroactively. Only the world which is above the physical limitations, only in the spiritual world, can we declare ourselves above the physical world, above the creation of time, and in that way, things can happen retroactively. Chacham eiger, a wise man, a Talmud Chacham, a learned man, or a bezdin, they are eiger l'mafreya. The idea of retroactive action can apply to a Chacham who is steeped in Torah and who is above the physical limitations of the world. Without Chachma, there's no eiger l'mafreya. And therefore, the idea of limafreya, of retroactive dissolving of a neder, is limited to a chacham. Rav Hutner goes on that the concept of tshuva, somebody does tshuva for an aveira he did, is also retroactive, because tshuva too requires a person to lift himself above his physical limitations, lift himself higher. If a person lifts himself higher, then he can throw away the limitations of time and do something that has an effect retroactively. So Rav Hutner mentions Nedarim and Tshuva. I would like to add Kinyan Eretz Yisrael. It's a very interesting thing that when Klal Yisrael enters Eretz Yisrael, and the Jewish people come to Eretz Yisrael for the first time and conquer it in the time of Yehoshua, the conquest is Chal L'Mafreya, so to speak. The Gemara says that when they conquered Eretz Yisrael, it became the possession of the Yitzei Mitzrayim, a generation that had left Egypt that was no longer alive. And they, in turn, passed it on as an inheritance to those who actually physically conquered it. So that the conquest of Eretz Yisrael from the very beginning was Limafreya, was a retroactive conquest, as if they had actually conquered it a generation earlier. The idea of Bnei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael from the very beginning is something which requires spirituality. From the very beginning, we declare the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael, it's not a davar gashmi. It's not something that can be explained within the physical world. with our ability to be here, to stay here, to thrive here, is not limited by the physical. In 1947, the British commanded a study as to how many people, how many human beings could live in Eretz Yisrael, how much this land could sustain. And they came up, interestingly, with a number of 600,000. That the land could only really keep 600,000 people going. What a joke. Baruch Hashem, there are 10 times that many here. Klal Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael is above the physical limitations of human beings. And we need to understand that as we appreciate being in Eretz Yisrael and the difficulties, there are difficulties today in Eretz Yisrael. We have to really feel part of it, a real part of it. A friend of mine from Bet Shemesh tells me how daily there's a need to go to a shelter. There are ear raid sirens. Eretz Yisrael need to be a surim. It's a noble opinion. We need to feel for the people here in Eretz Yisrael to understand that Eretz Yisrael is nikta lemafreya. It has that lemafreya stamp. Let me move on. In the Derech Sicha, in the first volume of Derech Sicha, in this week's parasha, Rabbi Kanievsky related the following story regarding the Beis Halevi. In the Beis Halevi's town, there's a woman whose husband disappeared. And they were worried. They thought maybe something had happened to him. Maybe he died. Maybe he had decided, a generation where it was very difficult to embrace Judaism, maybe he had decided to run off and throw away his Yiddishkeit to be able to succeed in a society which didn't accept Jews. They were very worried, and the woman came crying to the Beis Halevi for some sort of haftacha. Beis Halevi said, I could have, and I can't give you a haftacha. She begged him. Finally, she said to him, at least tell me, is he still alive? The Beis Halevi said, alive. Then she said, at least tell me, is he still from? And she said, the Beis Halevi replied, yes, he's from. And then she said, at least tell me, will he return? And the Beis Halevi said, yes, he will return. Of course, shortly thereafter, the husband returned with some sort of explanation for his disappearance. And people came to the Beis Halevi and they said, Moses, amazing. What you said came true. And the Beis Halevi said, no Moses. When she asked me, is he alive? I figured, the Gemara says there's a cheskas chai, there's a chazaka, that if someone was alive yesterday, he's still alive today. I went according to the chazaka and I said he's alive. When she asked, is he from? In the Gemara we have a chazaka of kashrus. The cheskas kashrus means that if he was from, we assume he's still from. And then when she asked, is he going to return? I figured, well, if he's alive and he's from, why wouldn't he return? This is the Beis Halevi's reasoning. Of course, it's a little difficult to understand what to take from the story beyond the Londisher reasoning of the Beis Halevi. And here I'd like to add my own little piece. In the Megillah Givas Olam, it brings a story regarding Rabbi Eiger. Rabbi Eiger refused to write Kameis. He refused to be in the Kabbalistic business and did not write Kameis except for once. At one time in his city there was an epidemic, and he wrote Kameis, he wrote amulets for people to wear in a pendant around their necks. After the danger passed, someone opened the Kameya to see what heebie-jeebie, what type of magical words were written there. And to their surprise, the Kameyas he gave out contained the words of a taisis in Sukkah Daftas, some words of a taisis in Sukkah. They were astounded, words of a taisis in Sukkah. That was a taisis on which Rabbi Eiger had a tremendous chiddush, had a chiddush that apparently he had put a lot of harvanya, a lot of work into. That was the Rabbi Eiger's Kameya. That was his schus. He had the schus of his harving and learning, and that schus of harving on the taisis he alluded to in this little piece of paper which people wore as protective amulet. Taking the lesson of that story back to the Beis Halevi. The Beis Halevi, he worked all his life on understanding chazakos, steikos and chazakos. Those are the hallmarks of the chidushim of Mishpachas Soloveitchik. And the Beis Halevi, first among them. When the Beis Halevi felt pressed to give some sort of a haftacha, he did it through chazakos, through that area in Torah which he had a chizuk in, which he had an achiza in. For my third and final presentation of today, I would like to share with you in the Parshas Matos, the beginning of Perek Lamed Aleph. Moshe Rabbeinu's life. The Tziv says an interesting insight. He says a klal. The place where someone or a number of people were punished for a sin, later on it needs an extra oomph, an extra push to make things happen. If you are in a place and you fail there and you want to succeed, it takes extra effort, extra chusim, extra power to be able to do so. He brings as a raya the story of Milchemes Ai in Sefer Yeshua, where in Ai they were defeated because Achin had taken from the booty. And later, when they defeated Ai, they needed the extra insurance of an eiger, of an ambush, of a special plan, something they didn't do anywhere else in Eretz Yisrael. Because once an einish of a sin had taken place there, it became a makom sakana. So too here. Klal Yisrael had sinned with the Bnei Midyan. And to succeed now, they needed Moshe Rabbeinu. They needed his chusin. He had to still be with them for them to be able to succeed in defeating Midyan. And this is also a Gemara in the Parakama de Saita, which says that Moshe Rabbeinu was buried mul beis par, k'dei lachaper al meisa par. His presence there would be a source of forgiveness for Klal Yisrael, for the sin that they had done with Pa'ar, which was the chet, the aveira of the Bnei Midyan. And so we see this idea that once you fail and now you have to fix things, you need an extra zechus, an extra power. Very often people learn in America don't do well, go to Eretz Yisrael and a matzliach. When they come back, it's hard to come back to the same yeshiva. A place where you failed in the past, it's hard to come and have atzlacha. It's best to try someplace new. This is his lesson. The lesson of the Netziv here is actually in its depth. The yisai that we have discussed on numerous occasions. We have pointed out that in Olam Hazeh, the first effort at things rarely succeeds. We're not B'nai Adam, we're B'nai Noach. The Adam, as an ancestor of Klal Yisrael, rather of humanity, failed. It had to go through the marble and be B'nai Noach. The Dar HaMidbar did not enter Eretz Yisrael. The first effort typically fails. This is a world of correction. Things have to be corrected. Things start one way, flopped, and have to be corrected. Some Bali Mashava point this out in Tanakh, where the Rabbi Shalom says, after Shaul sins, Nichamti ki imlachti as Shaul. Nichamti, I regret having made Shaul the king. Shortly thereafter, the Rabbi Shalom himself, through his Nabi, says, V'netzach Yisrael lo yishaker v'lo yinochem. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo yinochem does not have regret. Nichamti and lo yinochem, if you put them apart, ki lo adam only yinochem. And the answer is that in the plan A, in this world, it fails. The plan B is the second effort, the corrected effort. That's the effort that succeeds. I remember when I worked at Art Scroll, the people there would say that when they would take home a sefer, the best is to take home from the second edition. The first edition typically has some mistake or other. The second edition has all the corrections. That's Olam Hazeh. Olam Hazeh is a place where the second effort is the one that has to have a kiyum. And that's this idea. The idea that when you fail and then you fix, that's the time to put all your effort and to be successful. People who fail don't have the oomph, don't have the push to do it right the second time, and that you have to have. I'd like to leave today's shir with a question that's been bothering me as I'm learning Sefer Yeshua. It's clear at the end of Parshas Matos, the last Pesukim, that Klal Yisrael lived in the cities which the Goyim had lived in Canaan and in Eiger Hayarden. And only in the cities, but in the same homes. You're all familiar with the idea that the tzaras habayis, the nega tzaras in the homes in Eretz Yisrael, caused Klal Yisrael, the Jews, to break open the wall and find treasures that were hidden there by the Canaanim. Because they lived in the exact same homes that the Canaanim lived. I don't understand. The Bali Musar say that